John Boesky, and I'm a family therapist, and I also work with lots of athletes, collegiate athletes, professional athletes, high school athletes, etc. And today I want to offer you a brief demonstration on the powers of visualization. And before I do that, I want to impress upon you how come visualization is so instrumental for athletes in achieving peak performance. Essentially, the idea behind visualization is what you see is what you get, that your blueprints, your visions are the blueprints for your reality. Your visions are the blueprints for your reality. So just as when you're creating a house, you want to have a template or a blueprint before you create that house. When you're trying to create a desired outcome for how you want to perform, you want to have a blueprint, and how you visualize and imagine how you're going to perform creates that very blueprint. In addition to that concept, the reason that visualization works essentially is that it's a form of mental, emotional, and physical rehearsal. So just as actors must rehearse countless times before they perform at their very best on stage, it's important for you, the athlete, to perform, to rehearse mentally, emotionally, and physically countless times so that you too can perform at your very best when you're competing. Essentially, when it comes to visualization, when you've had that experience in your mind's eye enough times, what happens is your mind, body, and spirit then want to work easily and effortlessly to recreate the very experience that you've already had and envisioned. Before I offer my clients a visualization exercise that will serve them, I gather 3 pieces of information from them. And the first is, I ask them what their ideal performance state is. And an ideal performance state is essentially that state when they perform at their very best. Some athletes perform at their very best when they're feeling cool and confident and fully present. Other athletes when they're angry. Some athletes perform at their very best when their back's against the wall. Every athlete has his or her own optimal state of arousal, their own ideal performance state. The second thing I want to gather from athletes, I want them to identify a specific time in the past when they can remember performing in their ideal performance state. So I encourage them to just float back in time and consider, when did they perform at their very best? It could be in practice, it could be during competition. Any time when they performed at their very best is perfect. And then the last thing that I gather from athletes, I want them to consider, what's the very last thing that has to happen in order for them to know they've achieved their desired outcome. For a tennis player, it might be that moment when they shake hands and walk off the court victorious. For a mixed martial artist, it might be the moment when the ref pulls them off their opponent, or when they're raising their hands. For a golfer, it may be that moment in time when they're raising the trophy. What is that moment in time that lets them know they've achieved their desired outcome? And then, after that, I basically begin the visualization process. And what I do then is, I invite a client to close their eyes, and what happens is I'm going to have them go back into the past to that moment in time when they performed at their very best. And I'm going to bathe them in their senses and give them a real sense of what they were seeing, hearing, and feeling. And when they're fully in that experience of performing at their very, very best and what it feels like, when buoyed by that state, I'm going to have them float forward in time, drop down into their future experience, that next match, that next competition, that next fight, and from their own eyes I'm going to have them experience how they want to perform, how they want to feel, what they want to be believing about themselves. And then I have them consider or experience the very last thing that has to happen before they've achieved their desired outcome. And after that experience, I have them float back to the present time, back down into this room, and then I invite them to open their eyes. I'm going to invite you to consider your ideal performance state, to recall a specific time in the past when you performed in that state, and to consider the very last thing that has to happen in order for you to know that you've achieved your desired outcome. And then we'll begin the visualization process.